Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Just presenting a session this evening on effective revision strategies in the run-ups to obviously our Year 11 mocks when they return after our half term. But also this could be relevant for any other year group with their assessments, which are coming up towards the end of the year. Firstly, I want to begin by introducing our exams officer, which is Miss Soper. And just for the students' information, she can be found either in student reception or the office within the transfer room, and the students will know where the transfer room is, and Mrs. Office is just on the right in the transfer room. If you have any questions about exams or coursework, please feel free to email her at the email address listed there. So I just want to start off by stressing the importance of attendance and punctuality in terms of great academic achievement. Obviously, revision at home or whether it's in a local library helps, but the biggest and most important factor in terms of attainment and achieving good grades is attendance and punctuality to school. And to prove this, I have selected a year group at random, and I have looked at their progress with each attendance bracket. So you can see for students that attend school 96 to 100% of the time, they're working over a whole grade above their target grade, which would be set from when they were in year 6 and sat their SATs assessments. So you can see those students are working well over a grade over their target grade. So they've made outstanding and more than expected progress in secondary school. For students with 93 to 96% attendance, they have made around 3/4 of a grade above their target grades progress. So still good progress, but obviously not as good as those students that were in the 96 to 100% bracket. For students from 90 to 93%, almost a half a grade above their target grade, but not as high as the higher attended students. And those students for 80 to 90, 0.2, so around a fifth of a grade or going towards a third of a grade above the target, okay, which is a lot less than the students that were 96% and above. And for students with under 80% attendance, you can see they're actually not making good progress at all, and actually under their target grades. So it's really important that students attend school. Their attendance is ideally 96% and above. So what they're getting in lessons is going to be the most effective in terms of closing any gaps, making progress, and revision, which we do as teachers. We do revision with students. We teach them how to revise, but we also revise with them. And that's built into our curriculum and timeline. So it's really important students are in really good attendance and consistently across the school year. Now, how can you as parents help your children? So I'm going to say some things, some will be obvious and some may be new to you. So good revisers, and this was from a study that was done, tend to eat breakfast rather than skip it, sleep from 8 till 10 hours a night rather than get little sleep. I know it's very tempting for students to stay up on their phones when they've been told to kind of go to their room and go to bed, and that's something to keep an eye on, because when they come in tired the next day or they try to revise the next day, it's then going to have an impact on how much they're able to retain over a long period of time. Having consistent regular bedtimes, getting fresh air each day, exercising regularly helps. Past papers definitely help rather than just highlighting key passages. You want to ensure that your child is doing something active like past papers and marking it rather than just reading text and highlighting. Spreading out revision is shown to be more effective than cramming their revision the night before. Now, I'm not saying that students shouldn't be revising the night before. Students should be revising the night before, but that shouldn't be where they start. They should have spread out their revision over a time period so that when they come to the night before, they're just going over the kind of key points that they have covered over the last few weeks and months. Keeping a diary to capture any negative thoughts or someone to speak to rather than dwell on the worst case scenarios often helps students with their anxiety when approaching exams. Revising in a quiet environment definitely helps. So obviously, if there is a space at home that is quiet where students can revise, that's ideal. If it's not possible because of the number of siblings or whatever, often students go to the library to revise, whereas an enforced quiet environment, and that helps a lot of our students. I know when I was in school, that's what I did when I after school, was go to the library to get that quiet environment where I was able to revise before going home. Revising while listening to music or with the TV on is found to be, studies have shown, less effective. And students were able in the study to retain less, the ones that had listened to music or had the TV on whilst they're revising, than students that were revising in a silent environment. And for some students, they really struggle with silence. So perhaps classical music or music without words, like theme tunes and stuff like that, in the background are found to be better than music with words. So if your child is someone that really struggles with a completely silent environment, perhaps you can encourage them to play music that is not got words to it or words that they know, theme tunes or classical music or jazz or something that is kind of background music, something they're not going to sing along to, would be better than having music that they're really familiar with whilst revising. Drinking water regularly is really important, and putting their phone away during revision so they don't get distracted. It really helps for students to have a revision timetable, and so that they can account for when they're going to revise and what they're going to revise. Now, a good revision timetable doesn't, if you look at the example here, just have revise in it at certain points of the day. It actually has what subject they're going to revise at each point of the day. So rather than just saying revise, I'm going to revise on Wednesday evening at 5, they're saying, right, that's when I'm going to do French, and actually, or Spanish, or whatever the subject may be, maths. And if we wanted to take that further, students could actually write what topic they're going to revise within that subject. So I'm going to do maths quadratic equations, or I'm going to practice maths algebra at that point. Okay. So a good revision timetable doesn't just have the word revise on it at certain times. It has what subjects they're going to be doing, and they can be held accountable for that to show the work that they've been doing. Obviously, this one has times that they would normally be in school, but I think this has been produced so that if they're not in school, like in the half term and in the holidays, they would have that schedule there for the half terms and the holidays. Obviously, with half term approaching for year 11, it would be really good if they had this structure in place so they're using their half term effectively. Now, we have a half term school where we've sent a letter and we are offering sessions in various subjects on different days. But if the student doesn't have a subject they're needed for that day, they could have a structure like this at home where they're following revision schedule, but obviously put breaks in it as well. So if you look at that, you can see examples where they're going to go to the gym, where they're going to eat breakfast or lunch, where they're going to visit a friend, where they're going to practice their instrument, or they're going to have a film night, or that sort of thing. All of that's in there. So it's just real structure, but it's make sure they're getting a good number of hours with each subject. Now, if you look on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see that there is some data that has been produced in an article that shows that students that revise something once, after six months, remember about 20% of what they revised 6 months prior. Students that reviewed after 10 minutes, they were able to regurgitate around 25 to 30% of that review initially. So second time went over that information, revised again the fourth time, maybe after a month after initially the first contact with that bits of information, we're able to remember around 75%. So you can see there, the more time students are going over a particular topic, the more that they're going to remember. And Ideally the revision needs to be spaced, so not doing it day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, doing that topic 4 days running, but actually spreading it out. So revising on a particular day, then maybe the next day, then a week after that, then a month after that, going over it again. And then that way it keeps just boosting their memory and their recall so that they're able to remember more over a long period of time, because they need to, there's a lot of information in GCSEs and they need to be able to remember it over a long period of time. So going over things 4 or 5 times before the exam starts is shown to be the most effective way, spaced out. So in terms of the environment, we touched on this. It helps having a fixed place to study. So maybe a particular desk or room at home where they study, or a spot in the library. And they firmly associate this space with productive work. So it's where they go, they sit and they put their phone away, and they have that fixed place where they know that this is a place to be productive, this is somewhere to work. They have all the equipment and materials they need, the books within reach, so they don't have to get up and get something from another place or another room, because often that's a point where they could easily get distracted, or they could put off doing the work. And avoid music when revising. We've touched on this a little bit earlier, and if completely necessary, listening to classical or jazz or music with no words, so that their brain isn't distracted, because the brain can only hold and take in so much at a given time. Knowing what to revise. I think a key in really helping your child is knowing the exam boards they study for each subject. So for example, science, English and maths, in our school, we follow the AQA specification. Knowing the topics that are covered, and this is quite easy to find, it's easy, just even with a Google search. I'm sure teachers will be giving out specifications or checklists as the exams approach as well. And it would really help if students were able to tick each time they covered it, or even put a date each time they covered each topic. So for example, you can see here the first topic in science, in chemistry in particular, is defining the word element in terms of atoms, recalling the number of elements in the periodic table. So what would be helpful if students did a tick how or date the first time they went over or revised that, and then obviously doing that after one day, then maybe doing that a week later, and then a month later, and then doing another tick. So the students are able to say, look, I've gone over that 4 times or 5 times before the exam starts. So a checklist like this really does help. I've already touched on spacing out and interleaving topics. It's better to break a particular topic up into sections that's done over a period of time, rather than the top option where students just focus on one topic. So in history, I'm just going to do Henry VIII for all of January. And then I'm going to do the Cold War all of February. It's better for students to say, right, I'm going to do this part of Henry VIII in January, this part of Henry VIII in February, and then I'm going to do this part of the Cold War in January and this part of the Cold War in February. So they're actually splitting topics up, because that is helping boost their memory of what they've gone over with each month that progresses. So what are the most effective revision techniques? Testing yourself or having others test you is proven to be the most effective technique. So students, for example, could watch a particular YouTube video. There's a lot of good YouTube channels of revision out there that students can access via a laptop or their phone. Laptop would be better because it's less likely to distract them. And what they could do is write questions out from it, and then write the answers on the back, and then they could test themselves or get someone in the household to test them. Some subjects produce these as flashcards. So I know in science, we give out flashcards to all students in year 11, and they're able to test themselves on the content or get someone at home to test them. And the person at home doesn't need to know the answers, because those answers are on the back. And I know several subjects that can do this. Some students like producing it themselves, flashcards that they can test themselves, whether it's on the bus on the way to school or at home in the evening. Another effective method that's probably just as effective as testing yourself or having others test you is teaching someone else. When you have to teach someone else, your brain organizes the information in a very logical way that's more likely to stay in your long-term memory. So it's really powerful, and if students can teach someone else, whether it's a younger or older sibling, even a parent, and teach them what they've been revising, saying, look, mum or dad or brother, sister, can I just go through, I learned how to do this in maths, or I've been revising atoms and elements in chemistry, can I explain it to you? And that them teaching it really is going to help them remember it in the long term, and it'll be embedded that bit further in their long-term memory. Practice of exam questions is really important, but if students are practicing exam questions, they should have revised the material initially, and they should be marking it. Marking it is the key. Doing an exam paper that's not marked isn't that useful, because they're not getting the feedback about where they're getting wrong. And it's really powerful for students to do it themselves. It shows good independence, and it prepares them for sixth form and college as well. It doesn't have to be that they have to bring the piece of work to the teacher to mark. They can self-mark. If it's an exam paper or past paper, they can access many online. I know for science and maths and lots of other subjects, physics and maths tutor online has a whole plethora of exam questions and mark schemes that students can go through, and they can do the work and they can mark it. What is ineffective? So ineffective revision techniques are reading and highlighting. If you notice that your son or daughter is just reading and highlighting bits of information, that's not the most effective way to revise. Rewriting notes, a lot of students insist that really helps them. I would disagree strongly. I think the research disagrees with that as well. Rather than rewriting, students can actually make questions, and with the answers on the back, like I said, and test themselves, that'll be a lot more effective. This has been shared by Google, actually, a revision power hour. So it's a suggestion of how students can revise. So they choose a past paper question for a particular subject, obviously the right exam board. They revise it before they attempt the exam question. They revise that topic for 20 minutes. Then they do the question. Then they mark the answer and get the feedback. And if they feel like they're not confident in the way they've marked the answer, they can show the teacher then. I think that's a really quite a good method to revise. Why should, so we talked a lot about the how and the environment but why should they revise? Why should students carve out time to revise? Why should they have a revision timetable? Well, I thought I'd counter some of the points that students might raise to you. So some students may say, no matter what I do, it won't improve my grades anyway. Some students will say this out loud. Some will be thinking it and not show it, but show by their reluctance to revise that they don't think they can improve. Well, that's false. The research shows that people who work hard achieve more. Okay, and that is the line that needs to be, our students need to be reminded of. Students that work harder achieve more. Some people may say, I'll be fine if I just revise the night before the exam. And I think I've shown you the research that disproves this earlier on in this presentation. If you read the night before, you will forget around 80% of it. Okay, it's better to space revision out over a longer period of time rather than just try and cram it all the night before. If I revise now, I'll forget it all by June. Well, that's not true. It may need refreshing, but you won't unlearn it. Okay, and that's not true. And the brain is a really complex thing, and information does stay in our brains, and then one thing can trigger that recall of that information. Just refreshing or going over it quickly, then it all starts to come back to your memory. Okay. No one else is revising, and that is just not true. Often lots of students in my experience pretend that they're not working hard, but are working hard, and some students fall victim to that. They think that no one else is working hard, and they don't, and actually people have been working hard behind the scenes. So please encourage your child. There are people revising, some that are doing it overtly and some are doing it really subtly, but there are a lot of students that are working really hard, and that's across the country. And you know, all students know they're competing with students across the country at the same age that will be sitting at GCSE at the same time, the same day as them. You know, so they'll be competing with lots of students that are really thoroughly prepared, and we're seeing that the same in our school at Harris Morden. Lots of students working really hard, attending Saturdays, twilights, half-term schools. We're really pleased with year 11. So please continue to encourage your child if they're someone that is participating in that. And if they're not, please encourage them to do that. Thought I'd share this with you because the Metro a few years ago published top 20 regrets, and I thought this was really interesting. This is another why. Why should students revise, and why should they start thinking about that now and planning for that now in February when exams start in May? Well, February to May isn't that long. And if you include half term and Easter, in particular, the holidays, that's even less contact time with their teachers. Obviously, we are running sessions in Easter and half-term school and on particular Saturdays, but it's less contact with the teachers at that time. So we're looking at a couple of weeks, year 11 have, of lessons left before exams begin. If you look at number 4, it says not getting better exam results. So hundreds of thousands of people were asked what their top 20 regrets are, and the fourth most common answer was not getting better exam results. Number 5, not keeping in touch with people. But if you look at number 6, it's really interesting, not concentrating hard enough in school. So another one about school. And number 14, not going to college or university. So it's interesting that when adults were asked their top 20 regrets, 3 of the top 20 related to school and just wanting to do better. So just to finalize, give you some tips about some of the core subjects that most students, if not all students, will study. So for English, there are really good YouTube channels that your child can watch. Mr. Bruff is very popular for English, and Dr. Aiden. Very good YouTube channels that cover English language and English literature, and they explain things really well and thoroughly. I've seen this being used before really effectively. Maths, useful websites for maths. So there's Maths Genie is really good. Really good website for GCSE maths revision. Corbett Maths, now this is one of my favorites. I teach science, but I often try and tutor maths as much as I can. And Corbett Maths I find really useful. They have videos on pretty much every topic in maths on how to do it. That shows students how to do it with video, someone doing it live. But in addition to that, they have worksheets with answers, which you can access for free on the website. BBC Bite-sized Maths is really good as well, and Maths Watch your child will have a login for. That's really good. That marks things immediately for the student. For science, Primrose Kitten and Free Science Lessons are really good YouTube channels. I mentioned Physics and Maths Tutor have an exam question. They've also got revision notes on there, as well as exam questions and mark schemes. Physics and Maths Tutor probably actually has nearly every subject on there, and for most exam boards, so that's a really good one. I know it's titled Physics and Maths Tutor, but they actually have geography, history, psychology, lots on there. So please just have a look and check if the subject and the right exam board is there for what your child is studying. All students have a login for Educate, and there are study PowerPoints on there. There are quizzes. Students are able to set themselves quizzes. They don't have to wait for the teacher to set it as homework, but they also can self-study on Educate. And we've given all students question cards, as I mentioned earlier, so they're able to revise the topics that are being covered in their upcoming assessments. For geography, you can use the QR code here, but there are some really good websites, Seneca and BBC Bite-Size. The CGP books are really highly recommended by the geography department, and students will be given flashcards. Again, history have a Padlet with revision links on there. Again, Seneca really good, and BBC Bite-Size. So some questions to ask yourself as I finalize here. Before revision, how much time do I have? And this is what your son or daughter should be thinking. How do I spread out my revision? How can I vary the subjects I revise in one day? Which is why it's good to have a timetable. Students shouldn't be saying, well, I'm going to do all science tonight, 3 hours, 4 hours of science. They'll get bored. So it's better to do it in either half an hour, 45-minute increments, and revise a particular subject and then move on to another, so they don't get bored and it keeps them motivated and productive. Can I mix up the type of questions within a subject? Have I removed all potential distractions? What questions can I answer before I start revising? Whilst they're revising, students can ask themselves, have I done any past papers? Who can quiz me on this topic? Why is this true? Have I read my revision notes out loud? Now, I've seen that technique used where students read revision notes out loud, or they record themselves doing that and play it back to themselves. And actually, for some students, that works. Not for everyone, but that does work. So it's something for your son or daughter to try if that's something that interests them. After revision, who can I teach this to? Do I have a good bedtime routine? Am I getting plenty of sleep?